Mr. Stewart, I'll ask you again, the judge said slowly, his tone edged with irritation. Do you find these proceedings amusing, or are you simply too old to grasp the seriousness of your situation? 83-year-old James Stewart didn't respond. He sat motionless at the defendant's table, his back perfectly straight, a soldier's posture that contrasted sharply with his worn tweed jacket. His weathered hands, marked with age spots and twisted by time, rested quietly on the tabletop. He didn't meet the judge's eyes. Instead, his gaze was fixed on the large state seal mounted on the wall behind the bench. His pale blue eyes seemed distant, as though seeing not the courtroom but some faraway memory. Beside him, his young public defender, Ben Carter, shifted uneasily in his seat. "Your Honor, my client fully understands," Carter began carefully. Ben Carter's voice trembled slightly, a nervous contrast to the judge's booming arrogance. "Does he?" Judge Albright interrupted with a dismissive flick of his wrist. "Because from where I sit, I see a man showing nothing but contempt. For this court, for the law itself. A simple traffic citation, Mr. Stewart. Failure to yield. Yet here we are. Because you refused a plea, insisted on a trial, and wasted taxpayer money." But the truth was very different. The citation was false. James Stewart had been driving home from a VA appointment when a teenager in a sports car cut him off, nearly forcing his old pickup into a ditch. The responding officer, an old friend of the teen's father, had written James the ticket. It was small-town injustice, the kind that happened every day. For most, it might have been easier to just pay the fine and move on. But for James Stewart, a man who had lived by a lifelong code of quiet integrity, it was a lie he couldn't tolerate. He would not plead guilty to something he hadn't done. Judge Albright misread the old man's silence as defiance. "Look at me when I'm speaking to you, sir," he barked. James's eyes never moved. "That's it," the judge snapped. "I've had enough of this disrespect." What followed was a tirade, a performance crafted for the small crowd in the gallery. Albright lectured on civic duty, on respect for the institutions that held society together. He painted James as a bitter old man who thought his age placed him above the law. "People like you," he thundered, "believe that living a long life earns you special privilege, that you can pick and choose which laws apply to you." Ben Carter tried again. "Your Honor, Mr. Stewart is a veteran. He served this country. I don't care if he commanded a fleet." Albright snapped, his face reddening. "In this courtroom, he is a defendant, and I am the judge. His service, whatever it was, doesn't excuse disrespect. Frankly, his behavior disgraces the uniform he claims to have worn. It shows a lack of character, a lack of discipline." He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, savoring his control. He was enjoying himself, making an example out of the old man. "I've seen your type," Albright sneered. "Men who talk about honor and sacrifice, but when it comes to obeying simple laws, they crumble. They think the world owes them something. It's cowardice, that's what it is. Pure cowardice." The word landed like poison. A few spectators gasped. Ben Carter's jaw clenched until a muscle twitched in his cheek. He looked at James, expecting anger, hurt, something. But the old man didn't flinch. His face was calm, too calm, and that infuriated the judge even more. Albright felt his authority slipping away, undermined not by defiance but by silence, an unshakable calm he couldn't penetrate. Determined to break it, he leaned forward. "So tell us, Mr. Stewart," he said, voice dropping to a mocking whisper. "Where did you serve? Pushing papers in Germany? Peeling potatoes in some forgotten depot? Let's hear about this great service that gives you the right to sit there in contempt." For the first time, James moved. His thumb rubbed lightly against the inside of his wrist, just beneath his shirt cuff, a subtle, unconscious gesture. Ben Carter noticed it. He'd seen that tattoo before, faded, stretched with age, a ghostly emblem. The judge's voice faded in James's mind. The courtroom melted away, replaced by the humid air of the jungle, the scent of ozone, the rhythmic thwomp, thwomp, thwomp of helicopter blades. He was back in the jump seat of an MH-6 Littlebird, night sky over Laos alive with stars. The cold weight of a radio handset pressed against his ear as he listened to the breath of men who depended on his voice. The tattoo, once a sharp black mark, itched faintly, alive again with memory. A promise made long ago, Then it was gone. The memory blinked out, and he was back under fluorescent lights. Judge Albright was smirking now, mistaking the moment of dissociation for confusion. Nothing to say? The judge mocked. Didn't think so. The stories are always bigger than the man. That was the breaking point. For Ben Carter. He'd served himself 4 years in the JAG Corps at Bagram. He'd seen the quiet men, the ones who never bragged, the ones with 1,000-yard stare. He knew the real heroes never spoke of what they'd done. And now, watching this arrogant man ridicule someone who was one of them, he felt something cold and fierce rise inside him. This wasn't just wrong. It was sacrilege. While Albright droned on about sentencing, Carter quietly pulled out his phone, shielding it behind a legal pad. His fingers flew over the screen. He typed a message to an old friend, a master sergeant at Vandenberg Air Force Base. Sergeant Miller, urgent. Need a massive favor. I'm in Santa Maria Superior Court, 4B, Judge Albright. He's about to throw the book at an elderly veteran, James Stewart. He just called him a coward. Something's very wrong. He has a tattoo on his wrist. Faded, looks like a skull or a ghost with wings. I think it's a Spectre emblem. Please run the name James Stewart fast. He hit send. Heart pounding, he slipped the phone back into his pocket. It was a desperate move, a whisper into a storm, but sometimes whispers start avalanches. Back at Vandenberg, Master Sergeant David Miller was finishing paperwork when his phone buzzed. He read the message, and his expression changed with every line. By the time he reached Spectre emblem, his blood ran cold. He didn't just stand. He shot to his feet, his chair clattering against the wall. Within seconds, he was sprinting down the corridor, startling the airmen in his path. He burst into his commanding officer's office without knocking. "Sir," he gasped, "we've got a ghost protocol situation." Colonel Matt looked up sharply, his calm demeanor gone. "Explain." "Civilian courtroom in Santa Maria," Miller said. "A man named James Stewart. The judge is mocking him. Sir, he's got a Spectre tattoo." The color drained from the colonel's face. Without a word, he was on his feet, moving to a secure terminal. His fingers flew across the keyboard. The room fell silent, save for the faint hum of the computer and the weight of the name they were about to confirm. Colonel Matt typed in the name James Stewart and the call sign Spectre. The secure screen flickered once, then a single classified file appeared, glowing in crimson. Classified, Siskar eyes only. Ghost protocol, active. Matt froze. "My God," he whispered. Without hesitation, he reached for the red phone on his desk, the direct line to the Pentagon. Punching in a number from memory, he barked, "Get me General Creighton, now! This is a Spectre 1 alert. I repeat, Spectre 1 is active." The operator on the other end went silent for a heartbeat, instantly grasping the gravity of those words. Spectre 1 hadn't been spoken on an open line in decades. It was more myth than memory, a ghost story passed among veterans, whispered with reverence and fear. Seconds later, a deep, gravelly voice came through. "Matt, this had better be real," General Creighton said sharply. "It is, sir," Matt replied, his voice tight. "He's alive. He's in a civilian courtroom in Santa Maria. The judge has him as a defendant." There was a stunned pause on the other end. "Then, what's the situation?" "The judge is publicly humiliating him. The charge is a traffic violation." The line erupted with curses so fierce they could have peeled paint off the walls. "A traffic violation? They have Spectre 1 in traffic court?" Creighton thundered. "Do you have any idea who that man is?" "Yes, General. I do." "Good. Get a team airborne immediately. 2 in dress blues, full command escort. I want them there yesterday. I'm wheels up in 5. I'll deal with the judge personally. And, Colonel," Creighton's voice dropped to a lethal calm, "do this with the respect he's earned." Back in the courtroom, Judge Albright was savoring his moment of triumph. He believed he had broken the old veteran, proven his dominance. "James Stewart," he intoned, puffed with self-importance. "Given your advanced age, I see no value in fines or jail time. However, your evident contempt for this court and your cognitive decline make you a danger to yourself and others. It is the judgment of this court that you be remanded for a 72-hour psychiatric evaluation." Ben Carter shot to his feet. "Your Honor, you can't. That's a gross misuse of—" "Sit down, Mr. Carter," Albright roared, "or I'll hold you in contempt as well." He gestured to the bailiff. "Take the defendant into custody." The reluctant bailiff stepped forward, placing a hand on James's shoulder. "Come on, old-timer," he murmured gently. For the first time, James moved. He turned his head slowly and looked at the bailiff. His pale blue eyes were calm, clear as ice. The bailiff froze, struck by a strange shiver, as though he were staring into something vast and ancient. Then, without warning, the great double doors at the back of the courtroom swung open, not with a crash, but with a quiet, commanding force. Two Air Force Security Forces airmen in immaculate dress blues entered, tall, sharp, and purposeful. One held position at the door. The other advanced steadily down the center aisle. Behind them came a man whose presence silenced the room. He was in his late 50s, hair silvered at the temples, his chest a field of medals. On his shoulders gleamed 4 silver stars. His expression was carved from stone. He didn't glance at the judge. His eyes locked straight on James Stewart. The polished click of his shoes on the marble floor echoed like gunfire in the stunned silence. The bailiff froze mid-motion. The spectators craned to see. Judge Albright's confusion twisted into outrage. The general stopped in front of James and, without hesitation, snapped to attention. His salute cracked through the air. "Colonel Stewart," he said, voice rich with reverence. "General Creighton, United States Air Force. It's an honor to see you again, sir." James rose slowly, his movement deliberate. He gave a faint nod. "General," he said quietly. Judge Albright finally found his voice. "What is the meaning of this? This is a court of law! You have no authority here." General Creighton turned toward him, eyes like glacial steel. "You," he said softly, "will remain silent, or I will have you silenced." Then he addressed the room, voice commanding. "For the record, and for your education, Judge Albright, the man you have spent this morning insulting is Colonel James Stewart, United States Air Force retired. The man you called a coward is a recipient of the Air Force Cross, the Silver Star with 3 oak leaf clusters, the Distinguished Flying Cross, the Purple Heart, and the Medal of Honor, awarded by President Lyndon B. Johnson himself." The gallery gasped. Ben Carter's eyes burned with tears as he looked at his client, this quiet old man now revealed as a living legend. The general continued, his voice carrying the weight of history. Colonel Stewart was a founding member of the Air Force's Special Operations Division in the 1960s. He flew over 200 combat missions in secret operations across North Vietnam and Laos. He pioneered modern combat search and rescue. On one mission, after his aircraft was shot down deep behind enemy lines, he spent 3 days wounded and alone, coordinating airstrikes that saved an entire company of Rangers. He refused evacuation until every one of those 84 men was safely extracted. The general paused, his voice softening. "We called him Spectre 1 because he was a ghost, appearing where no one else could go, bringing our boys home. That man," he said, pointing to James, "has done more for this nation in 1 afternoon than you, Judge Albright, will do in 100 years behind that gavel." The judge sat frozen, his color draining to ash. "Your behavior today," Creighton continued, "is a disgrace to your robe, to your court, and to this country. It will be reported to the highest levels. And next time you dare mock a veteran, remember, heroes like him made it possible for you to sit on that bench at all." The silence that followed was total. Then James Stewart spoke. His voice was quiet, steady, and impossibly calm. "Your Honor," he said, "respect doesn't come from a title or a robe. It's earned through what you do, not what you say. Courage isn't about noise or speeches. Most of the time, it's about being quiet, doing the right thing when no one's watching, when it's hardest to do." He looked around the room, his gaze soft but piercing. "We all fight our own battles. Just make sure you know whose ground you're standing on before you open fire." For a heartbeat, the courtroom vanished for him. He was back in Echo Valley, in a smoky command tent, the air heavy with blood and cordite. A young pararescue airman named Miller lay dying, gripping his arm. "Don't let them forget us, Spectre," the boy rasped. James had squeezed his hand. "Never, son. I promise." That promise had become his burden, his honor. It was why he couldn't lie, even about a traffic ticket. General Creighton placed a hand gently on his back. "Let's go home, Jimmy." Together, they walked down the aisle, the two airmen following as an honor guard. One by one, everyone in the gallery rose, some with tears, some with hands over hearts. A silent tribute to a man who had earned their deepest respect. Ben Carter stood watching, awestruck. The case was dismissed with prejudice before the general's vehicle even left the parking lot. The fallout was swift. Judge Albright was suspended, then investigated. A court stenographer's account leaked, and the story went viral. Albright was forced to issue a public apology and undergo mandatory veteran sensitivity training. His career was effectively over. James Stewart refused all interviews, turning down every spotlight. He simply returned to his quiet life, tending his garden, sharing coffee with friends on Tuesdays. Months later, a familiar face appeared at his table in a small diner. Albright. He looked smaller now, deflated, remorseful. "Mr. Stewart," he said softly, "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry." James studied him for a long moment, then gave a single slow nod. It was enough. Albright turned and left without another word. James watched him go, then returned to his coffee, calm, steady, at peace. Because true valor doesn't shout. It doesn't need to. It simply is. If this story moved you, like the video, subscribe to Veterans Valor, and share it, so no one ever forgets that the greatest heroes often walk among us in silence.